I thought today would be normal, but when I caught my reflection in the office washroom mirror, I realized everything had already changed. The tears in my eyes were the ones I never wanted anyone to see. The kind that meant something inside me had shattered beyond repair. Melvin had broken me. My boyfriend, no, not anymore. He was just a stranger now wearing a familiar face. This morning he sent me a message that felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I found someone better, Cam. You were just temporary. That word echoed in my mind like a cruel joke. Temporary, as if our 2 years together meant nothing. As if I was just a placeholder until someone worthier came along. I tried to compose myself, splashing cold water on my face until my skin felt numb, but the pain inside refused to wash away. Walking back to my desk felt like moving through thick fog, each step heavier than the last. The office buzzed with its usual energy, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, people chatting about weekend plans, but I felt completely disconnected from it all. I sat down at my desk and stared blankly at my computer screen, unable to focus on the spreadsheet that needed updating. My mind kept replaying Melvin's words, dissecting every moment of our relationship, searching for signs I must have missed. Was I really that forgettable? That easy to replace? The questions spiraled endlessly, each one cutting deeper than the last. Logan appeared beside my desk, his familiar presence momentarily pulling me from my thoughts. He was Axel Harrington's personal assistant and technically my senior, though he never acted superior about it. Cam, listen up, he said with his usual easygoing tone. Miss Harrington is coming to the office today. Axel has back-to-back meetings scheduled, so he needs you to handle her guest arrangements. Can you do that? I nodded automatically, not trusting my voice to stay steady. Logan gave me a thumbs up and walked away, completely unaware that I was barely holding myself together. I had never met Axel's mother before. The rumors around the office painted her as this elegant, sophisticated woman who commanded respect wherever she went. Today of all days, when I felt like I was falling apart at the seams, I had to present myself professionally to someone like that. The irony wasn't lost on me. I made my way to the reception area, trying to steady my breathing and push down the tightness in my throat. My hands felt clammy, and I discreetly wiped them on my pants while rehearsing a polite greeting in my head. The glass doors opened, and she entered with a grace that seemed effortless. Mrs. Harrington was everything people said and more. Sharp, defined features that spoke of strength, perfectly styled silver hair that caught the light, and an outfit that screamed understated wealth. But what caught me off guard were her eyes. They held a warmth that contradicted everything I expected, a gentleness that made me feel immediately seen. You must be Camden, she said, her voice soft and welcoming. I managed an awkward nod, forcing myself into professional mode as I extended my hand. Yes, ma'am, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please, follow me to the conference room. The walk down the hallway felt longer than usual. I was hyper-aware of every movement, terrified that somehow my emotional state would become visible. I opened the conference room door for her, gesturing toward the plush chairs arranged around the mahogany table. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? Water? I asked, proud that my voice came out steadier than I felt. Coffee would be lovely, dear. Thank you, she replied, settling into her seat with the kind of poise that made everything look easy. I escaped to the small kitchenette attached to the executive floor, grateful for a moment alone. My hands trembled slightly as I prepared her coffee, not from nerves about making a good impression, but from the effort of holding back everything I was feeling. I had to keep it together. I couldn't afford to fall apart at work, especially not in front of the CEO's mother. Taking a deep breath, I carried the coffee back and placed it carefully on the table in front of her, hoping she wouldn't notice the slight shake in my fingers. But she noticed. Of course she noticed. Are you okay? The question came gently, almost cautiously, as if she was trying not to startle me. I froze, my rehearsed professional smile faltering. Why, yes, ma'am. I'm fine, I managed to say, but even I could hear how unconvincing it sounded. My voice cracked on the last word, betraying me completely. She tilted her head slightly, studying my face with an intensity that made me feel transparent. Then she stood, moving toward me with deliberate slowness, as if approaching something fragile that might break. "You don't look fine, dear," she said quietly, and there was no judgment in her tone. Only concern. I opened my mouth to offer some excuse, to maintain the professional barrier between us, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt the tears I had been fighting all morning begin to well up again, hot and insistent. I tried to turn away, to hide my face, but it was too late. She was already there, gently placing her hands on my shoulders, grounding me when I felt like I might float away into my own misery. Her touch was maternal, something I hadn't experienced in years. My own mother lived 3 states away, and we weren't particularly close. This stranger's kindness felt like a lifeline I didn't know I needed. "Tell me who hurt you," she said. And the way she said it, not as a command but as an invitation, broke something loose inside me. The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, and I couldn't stop them anymore. I covered my face with my hands, embarrassed and relieved all at once, feeling the weight of this morning's pain finally finding a release. Mrs. Harrington didn't pull away or seem uncomfortable. Instead, she guided me to one of the conference room chairs, her presence steady and reassuring. I collapsed into the seat, my composure completely shattered, and for the first time since reading Melvin's message, I allowed myself to truly feel the hurt. She pulled a chair close to mine and sat down, not hovering but simply being there, waiting patiently for me to gather myself enough to speak. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "This is so unprofessional. I shouldn't." She cut me off gently, shaking her head. "Don't apologize for being human, Camden. We all carry pain. The question is whether we carry it alone or allow someone to help shoulder the weight." Her words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let someone see me like this. Maybe falling apart in front of the right person wasn't weakness, it was the first step toward putting myself back together. I couldn't believe this was actually happening, that a complete stranger, and not just any stranger but the CEO's mother, was sitting here asking about my pain with such genuine care. When Miss Harrington pulled me closer, not physically but emotionally, creating this safe space between us, something inside me gave way. All the hurt I had been suppressing since this morning began pouring out, and I couldn't hold it back anymore. I buried my face in my hands, my shoulders shaking slightly, and managed to choke out, "It's nothing, ma'am, just personal stuff. I'll be fine." But she didn't accept that dismissal. Her hand remained on my arm, steady and warm, and she leaned forward slightly. "Personal doesn't mean you have to carry it alone, Camden," she said firmly but kindly. "Sometimes sharing the burden makes it lighter. Sometimes we need to speak our pain out loud to begin healing from it." There was wisdom in her voice, the kind that comes from experience rather than empty platitudes. I lifted my head slowly, meeting her eyes, and saw only compassion looking back at me. She guided me to sit properly in the chair, then pulled another one directly across from me, eliminating any physical distance between us. It struck me as surreal. Here was this high society woman, dressed in what was probably a designer outfit worth more than my monthly rent, treating me like I mattered, like my pain was important enough to pause her day for. "Take your time," she encouraged gently. "I'm not going anywhere." I drew in a shaky breath, trying to organize my thoughts into coherent sentences. My ex-boyfriend now, his name is Melvin," I began, and saying his name out loud made it all feel more real, more final. "He ended things this morning, through a text message. He said he found someone better, and that I was just temporary, like I was some kind of trial run for the real thing." My voice broke again on those last words, and fresh tears tracked down my cheeks. I wiped at them angrily, frustrated with myself for being so vulnerable in front of someone I barely knew. Mrs. Harrington's expression hardened slightly, not at me, but at what I had told her. She reached across and took both my hands in hers, squeezing firmly. "Then he didn't deserve you, Camden," she declared with absolute conviction. "Not even for a moment. Anyone who treats another person as temporary, as disposable, reveals their own character, not yours. Your worth isn't diminished by someone else's inability to recognize it." Her words hit me like a wave, washing over the hurt and offering something I desperately needed. Validation that I wasn't crazy for feeling devastated, that my pain was legitimate. She released one of my hands to reach for the tissue box on the conference table, passing it to me. I took several tissues, cleaning up my face while she continued speaking. I'm going to tell you something, Camden. And I want you to really hear it. She paused until I made eye contact with her. I was engaged once, long before I met my husband. His name was Richard, and I thought he was my entire future. Then one day, without warning, he left me for his ex-girlfriend. Told me he realized he never stopped loving her. I blinked in surprise, not expecting such a personal revelation. Mrs. Harrington smiled sadly, lost in the memory. I was destroyed. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't imagine my life without him. But you know what I learned? That heartbreak, as terrible as it feels, doesn't define us. It refines us. It shows us what we won't tolerate, what we truly deserve, and most importantly, it reveals our own strength. She paused, letting her words sink in. Your worth isn't determined by someone who couldn't see it. It exists independently of their recognition. We sat there for what must have been 20 minutes, talking about heartbreak, healing, and finding the courage to believe in yourself again when someone has tried to convince you that you're not enough. Mrs. Harrington shared more stories from her life, each one feeling like a gift, the kind of hard-earned wisdom that only comes from living through difficulty and emerging stronger. For the first time since reading Melvin's message, I felt something other than pain. I felt hope, fragile but present, that maybe I could survive this. She had just finished telling me about how she met her husband at a charity event where she almost didn't go because she was still nursing her broken heart. When the conference room door suddenly opened, the shift in atmosphere was immediate and palpable. Axel Harrington stood in the doorway, and even from across the room his presence commanded attention. He was tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was styled precisely, and his gray eyes, sharp and assessing, landed directly on me. I straightened in my chair automatically, feeling caught doing something wrong even though I hadn't been. The silence that fell over the room felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't quite name. "Mom," Axel said, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone trying to remain professional while clearly confused. "What's going on here? You were supposed to wait in the executive lounge." Mrs. Harrington stood gracefully, completely unfazed by her son's stern demeanor. "I was getting to know your team better, Axel," she replied smoothly, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Camden here has been absolutely wonderful, keeping me company and making sure I had everything I needed. He's quite a sweet young man." She glanced back at me with a warm smile that somehow made me feel both protected and exposed. But Axel's attention remained fixed on me, and I couldn't read his expression. Was he annoyed that I had monopolized his mother's time, suspicious about why she was in here with me instead of the designated waiting area? His eyes narrowed slightly as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Camden," he said, his tone neutral but firm. "You're needed at your desk. Several urgent emails came through regarding the Morrison account and they require immediate attention." I jumped to my feet, grateful for the excuse to leave but also somehow reluctant to end this moment with Mrs. Harrington. "Yes, sir. Right away," I said quickly, my voice steadier now than it had been all morning. I turned to his mother, managing a genuine smile despite everything. "Thank you, Miss Harrington. For everything. It meant more than you know." She reached out and squeezed my hand one more time. "Anytime, dear. Remember what we talked about." As I hurried past Axel toward the door, I felt his gaze follow me, heavy with questions I knew he would probably ask his mother the moment I left. I didn't look back, couldn't look back, because I was afraid of what I might see in his expression. The walk back to my desk felt surreal, like I was returning from another world. Logan glanced up as I approached, eyebrows raised in question, but I just shook my head slightly, not ready to explain what had just happened. Sitting down at my desk, I pulled out my phone and finally deleted Melvin's message, blocked his number and took my first real breath of the day. Mrs. Harrington was right. My worth existed whether he recognized it or not. And maybe, just maybe, I was stronger than I had given myself credit for. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Not completely healed, but lighter somehow, like someone had lifted part of the weight I had been carrying. Mrs. Harrington's words kept replaying in my mind during my commute. Strength isn't about never breaking, it's about standing up afterward. I held on to that thought as I walked into the office, determined to focus on my work and prove to myself that I could move forward. But the universe had other plans. I had barely set my bag down at my desk when Logan appeared beside me, wearing an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Dude," he said quietly, leaning in conspiratorially, "you need to go to Axel's office. Like now. He specifically asked for you." My stomach dropped. Logan must have seen the panic flash across my face because he quickly added, "Don't freak out." He didn't sound angry or anything. Just serious. "Good luck, bro." My mind raced as I made my way toward the executive floor. Had I done something wrong yesterday? Was Axel upset that I had broken down in front of his mother? Maybe he thought I was unprofessional, unstable, a liability to the company. By the time I reached his office door, my heart was hammering against my ribs. I knocked twice, trying to keep my hands steady, and heard his voice call out, "Come in." Axel's office matched his personality. Sleek, organized, intimidating in its precision. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, modern art hung on the walls, and his massive desk stood like a command center in the middle of the room. He sat behind it in his leather chair, surrounded by files and multiple computer monitors, looking every bit the powerful CEO everyone said he was. He gestured toward the chair across from him without looking up from whatever document he was reading. "Sit down, Camden." I lowered myself into the chair, acutely aware of how exposed I felt under the bright morning light streaming through those windows. Axel finally looked up, setting aside his pen, and I noticed for the first time that his gray eyes weren't actually cold. They were guarded, watchful, like someone who had learned to be careful about what they revealed. He studied me for a long moment before speaking. "My mother told me what happened yesterday," he began, his voice measured and professional. "I want to make something clear. I'm not calling you in here to reprimand you or make you uncomfortable." I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak yet. He continued, lacing his fingers together on the desk. "However, I do need to ask you something directly, and I need an honest answer. After what you're going through personally, are you able to continue working here? Can you maintain the level of performance this position requires? I'm asking about your mental and emotional capacity, not questioning your dedication." The directness of his question actually made it easier to answer honestly. I met his gaze and spoke clearly. "Yes, sir. I can handle it. What happened yesterday was a moment of weakness, but it doesn't define my ability to do my job. I won't let my personal issues affect my professional responsibilities. You have my word on that." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a slight softening around his eyes. "Good," he said simply. "Because my mother seems to think you're worth keeping around. And she's rarely wrong about people. She has this ability to see past the surface, to recognize genuine character when she encounters it." He paused, then reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small cream-colored envelope. "She asked me to give you this personally. Insisted I hand-deliver it rather than leaving it on your desk." I took the envelope with trembling fingers, confused about what it could possibly contain. Axel gave me a slight nod, giving me permission to open it in front of him. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery, the kind with subtle embossing along the edges. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, every letter perfectly formed. "Camden, strength isn't about never breaking. It's about standing up again after you fall. You're stronger than you think, dear. Don't let one person's blindness convince you that you're invisible. The right people will see you clearly. Mrs. H." My throat tightened and I had to blink rapidly several times to keep from crying again. I carefully folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, knowing I would read it many more times in the coming days whenever I needed reminding. "Please tell her thank you," I managed to say, my voice rough with emotion. "This means everything to me. You can tell her yourself next time she visits." Axel replied, and I detected the faintest hint of warmth in his tone. "She mentioned wanting to take you to lunch sometime, actually. Said something about making sure you're eating properly during stressful times." He shook his head slightly, a ghost of a smile appearing. "She tends to adopt people she cares about. Fair warning." I couldn't help but smile at that, imagining Mrs. Harrington in full maternal mode. The image was simultaneously touching and slightly overwhelming. I stood to leave, feeling distinctly lighter than when I had entered. But as I reached for the door handle, Axel's voice stopped me. "Camden." I turned back, finding him standing now, his hands in his pockets, his posture less rigid than usual. He seemed to struggle with whatever he wanted to say, opening his mouth then closing it, before finally settling on, "If you ever need to talk professionally or personally, my door is open. I mean that sincerely. What you're going through, it's not easy and you shouldn't have to navigate it completely alone." The vulnerability in those words, coming from someone as controlled as Axel Harrington, caught me completely off guard. "Thank you, sir," I said softly. I appreciate that more than you know." He nodded once, then seemed to retreat back into his professional shell, the moment of openness closing as quickly as it had appeared. "The Morrison files need your attention today. Make sure the quarterly report is ready for review by 3. Just like that, we were back to boss and employee, but something fundamental had shifted between us. Walking back to my desk, I felt like I was navigating a strange new reality. The man everyone described as distant and unapproachable had just offered me personal support. His mother had somehow seen past my professional facade to the hurting person underneath and decided I was worth her time and compassion. My ex-boyfriend had discarded me like I meant nothing, but these two near strangers had shown me more kindness in 2 days than Melvin had in our entire relationship. Logan caught my eye as I sat down, giving me a questioning look, but I just offered a small smile and turned to my computer. Some things were too complex to explain, too fragile to share yet. I pulled out Miss Harrington's note one more time, reading it slowly, letting each word sink deeper into the wounded places inside me. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. Maybe this ending was actually a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, the people who were supposed to see my worth were finally starting to appear in my life. The Morrison files could wait 5 more minutes. Right now, I needed to sit with this feeling, this tentative, careful hope that things might actually be okay. The weeks that followed felt like watching ice slowly melt, gradual, almost imperceptible changes that accumulated into something undeniable. Axel had become different around me, or maybe I had just started noticing details I had missed before. He would appear in the break room during my coffee runs, making casual observations about the weather or asking if I had seen the latest financial reports. These weren't the stiff, formal exchanges I had grown accustomed to from him. There was an ease creeping into our interactions, small smiles that reached his eyes when I made a competent suggestion during team meetings, a relaxed posture that suggested he felt comfortable in my presence. I tried not to read too much into it, reminding myself that he was probably just being kind because his mother had asked him to keep an eye on me. But then something happened that shattered that theory completely. It was a Thursday afternoon and I was deep into reconciling some accounting discrepancies when my desk phone rang. "Camden, please come to my office." Axel's voice was professional, but there was an underlying current of something I couldn't identify. When I entered his office, he was standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the city skyline. He turned when he heard me close the door. "I have a significant client meeting tomorrow morning," he began without preamble. "It's with the Westfield Corporation. They're considering a major investment, and this meeting could determine whether we secure the contract. I want you to accompany me as my assistant for this meeting." My mind went blank for a moment. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Logan handles all your client meetings, and he has much more experience with this kind of—" Axel cut me off with a raised hand. "I'm aware of Logan's capabilities. This isn't about experience levels. I've been observing how you work, Camden. You have an attention to detail that's remarkable, and you stay calm under pressure. More importantly, I trust your judgment. That's not something I say lightly or often." Trust. The word hung between us like something tangible, weighty. Everyone in the office knew that Axel Harrington didn't trust easily. He had built his reputation on being selective, careful, almost paranoid about who he allowed into his inner circle. And here he was, extending that trust to me, someone who had broken down crying in front of his mother just weeks ago. "I won't let you down," I promised, meaning every word. The next morning I dressed more carefully than usual, triple-checking that I had all the necessary documents and materials. We took Axel's private car to an upscale restaurant downtown where the meeting was scheduled. The clients were already there when we arrived. 2 senior executives from Westfield, who exuded the kind of confidence that comes from old money and established power. I watched Axel transform before my eyes, becoming the sharp, commanding CEO that made competitors nervous. He presented our proposal with such precision and charisma that I found myself genuinely impressed, seeing a side of him I had only heard about in office gossip. The meeting went exceptionally well. By the time we finished our meal, the Westfield executives were nodding enthusiastically, already discussing implementation timelines. As we walked back to the car, Axel's driver holding the door open, I felt a surge of pride at having been part of something so significant. The car pulled away from the curb, and we sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, both of us decompressing from the high-stakes interaction. "You did well in there," Axel said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "The way you caught that discrepancy in their projected numbers, that was sharp thinking. It showed them we're thorough." I felt warmth spread through my chest at the praise. "Thank you, sir. I was just trying to be useful." He turned slightly in his seat to face me more directly. "How are you holding up, Camden? With everything that happened, your situation with your ex-boyfriend. Are you managing okay?" The question caught me off guard, both because of its personal nature and because of the genuine concern in his voice. "I'm doing better," I answered honestly. "Your mother helped me see things differently. She helped me understand that what happened doesn't define my value. I still carry her note with me. Actually, I read it sometimes when I need the reminder." Something shifted in Axel's expression, a softening that made him look younger, less burdened. "She's always had that gift," he said quietly, "the ability to see people for who they really are, not who they pretend to be. She sees souls, I think. The parts we try to hide from everyone else." There was something wistful in his tone, and I wondered if he was speaking from personal experience. Then something completely unexpected happened. Axel leaned forward and instructed his driver to pull over. We were passing a small park, trees lining a peaceful walking path, where a few people strolled in the midday sun. The car glided to a stop, and Axel turned to face me fully. His expression was different now, vulnerable in a way I had never seen, as if he was about to step off a cliff and wasn't sure if he could fly. "Camden, what I'm about to say might be crossing a line," he began, his voice lower than usual. "I know there are professional boundaries, hierarchies that exist for good reasons, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to know that you can say no without any repercussions to your job or our working relationship." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "Would you consider having dinner with me? Not a business dinner. Not as employer and employee. Just two people sharing a meal, getting to know each other outside these roles we play." My heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. Was this really happening? Was Axel Harrington asking me out? The thoughts tumbled through my mind in rapid succession. The ethics of dating your boss, the complications it could create, the risk of getting hurt again when I was just starting to heal. "I don't know if that's appropriate," I said carefully. "The power dynamic alone." "I know," he interrupted gently. "I've thought about all of that. If you're not interested, if this makes you uncomfortable, we never have to mention it again. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel something when I'm around you. You're not like anyone else I've met, Camden. You're genuine in a world full of people playing games. And I'd like the chance to know you better, if you're willing to give me that chance." The vulnerability in his admission undid something in me. Here was this powerful, controlled man, essentially laying his feelings out for my inspection, risking rejection, being brave in a way I wasn't sure I could be. "Can I think about it?" I asked softly. "This is all very unexpected, and I need some time to process everything." Relief flooded his features. "Of course. Take all the time you need. No pressure, no expectations. Just consider the possibility. That's all I'm asking." He gave instructions to his driver, and we continued back to the office. The rest of the ride passed in charged silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Back at my desk, I couldn't concentrate on anything. My mind kept replaying the conversation, analyzing every word, every facial expression. What did I want? Was I ready to trust someone again after Melvin had destroyed that trust so completely? But then I remembered Mrs. Harrington's words. Strength is standing up again. Maybe this was my moment to stand up, to take a risk on something that scared me but also felt right in a way I couldn't fully articulate. Maybe healing wasn't about avoiding all possibility of future pain, but about choosing to be brave anyway. I spent 2 full days wrestling with my decision, having entire conversations with myself during my morning commute and before bed at night. Part of me screamed that this was too risky, too soon, too complicated, but another part, a quieter, braver part, whispered that maybe this was exactly what I needed. Finally, on Wednesday evening, I sat down at my laptop and typed out an email before I could second-guess myself into paralysis. "I'd like to have dinner with you." My finger hovered over the send button for what felt like an eternity before I finally clicked it. His response came within minutes, which meant he must have been checking his email obsessively. "Friday evening, 7 o'clock. I'll send you the address tomorrow. Thank you for saying yes, Camden." The simplicity of his message somehow made it more meaningful. No elaborate declarations, no overwhelming pressure, just quiet appreciation. Friday arrived with me changing outfits 3 times before settling on dark slacks and a deep blue button-down that my sister had bought me last Christmas. The restaurant he had chosen was tucked away in a quieter part of downtown, the kind of place that clearly valued privacy over flashiness. When I arrived, Axel was already there, standing near the entrance, and I almost didn't recognize him at first. Gone was the intimidating CEO in his power suit. Instead, he wore simple dark jeans and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his forearms. He looked human, approachable, and the nervous smile he gave me when our eyes met made my heart do an unexpected flip. "I hope this place is okay," he said as the hostess led us to a secluded corner table. I wanted somewhere we could actually talk without half the business world watching and speculating. I appreciated his thoughtfulness more than he probably realized. We ordered drinks, wine for him, sparkling water for me because I needed to keep my head clear. And then there was that awkward moment when two people on a first date realize they have to actually converse. But the awkwardness dissolved faster than I expected. Axel started asking about my background, where I grew up, what had drawn me to this career path. I found myself opening up about my small-town childhood, my complicated relationship with my father who had wanted me to take over his hardware store instead of pursuing a business degree. He listened with such focused attention that it felt like nothing else in the world existed except our conversation. Then he began sharing his own story, and I realized I was seeing behind the curtain of carefully constructed perfection. "My father was a successful businessman," Axel said, his fingers tracing the rim of his wineglass. "He built an empire through ruthless tactics and zero tolerance for weakness. When I told him I wanted to start my own company based on ethical practices and treating employees as humans rather than resources, he laughed in my face. Said I was too soft, that the business world would chew me up and spit me out." There was old pain in his voice, carefully controlled but definitely present. He gave me an ultimatum: join his company and do things his way, or he'd disown me and I'd get nothing. I chose nothing, started from scratch, took out loans, worked 18-hour days for years, built everything you see now without a single dollar of his money. But I had to become someone harder to survive. Had to bury the parts of myself he called weak. The bitterness in his slight smile made my chest ache. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "That must have been incredibly difficult, having to choose between your values and your family." He shrugged, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. It taught me that emotions are liabilities in business, that caring too much gives people leverage against you. So I stopped caring, or at least I pretended to, until recently. The weight of that last statement settled between us. Before I could respond, he asked, "Can I ask you something that might be too personal?" I nodded, my pulse quickening. "I've noticed you have this tendency to make yourself smaller in groups, to defer to others even when you clearly have valuable input. Why do you do that? Why do you consistently place yourself at the bottom of your own priority list?" No one had ever called me out on this so directly, and the accuracy of his observation left me momentarily speechless. "I suppose," I began slowly, working through my thoughts as I spoke, "I've always felt like I had to earn my place, prove I was worthy of taking up space. My ex reinforced that feeling, made me believe I was lucky he tolerated me, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection he threw my way. After a while, you start believing that's all you deserve." Axel reached across the table and covered my hand with his. The gesture was simple, but the warmth of his palm against mine sent electricity up my arm. "You deserve so much more than scraps, Camden." I wish you could see yourself through my eyes. Competent, insightful, genuinely kind in a world that often mistakes kindness for weakness. You're not replaceable or temporary or any of the other lies someone told you. You're exceptional. The sincerity in his voice made my throat tight with emotion. We held eye contact for a long moment. Something unspoken but profound passing between us. The rest of dinner flowed easily after that breakthrough. We discovered a shared love of old movies, debated the merits of various coffee brewing methods, laughed over embarrassing work stories. By the time dessert arrived, I felt more relaxed and genuinely happy than I had in months. When we finally left the restaurant, Axel insisted on driving me home. The car ride started out companionably quiet, both of us processing the evening, but then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out absently and felt my entire body go rigid when I saw the name on the screen. Melvin. The message preview showed enough to make my stomach drop. I made a huge mistake, Cam. I miss you. I must have made some sound because Axel glanced over, his expression shifting to concern. Everything okay? He asked carefully. I stared at my phone screen, frozen with indecision. It's my ex, I said quietly. He's saying he made a mistake, that he wants to talk. The silence that followed felt heavy, loaded with unasked questions and unspoken fears. When we pulled up outside my apartment building, I sat there unable to move, my mind a chaotic mess of competing emotions. Axel didn't push, didn't demand anything, just waited patiently for me to process. Finally, I reached for the door handle, but his hand gently caught my wrist. Camden, listen to me, he said, his voice serious but kind. Whatever you decide to do about that message, make sure it's because it's what you actually want. Not because you feel guilty, not because you're afraid of being alone, not because it seems like the easier path. Choose what serves you, not what serves someone else's regret. I met his eyes, seeing nothing but genuine care reflected back at me. Thank you for tonight, I managed to say. For everything. He smiled. A real smile that softened all his sharp edges. Anytime. I mean that. I walked up to my apartment in a daze, Axel's words echoing in my head alongside Melvin's message. That night I lay awake for hours, staring at my ceiling, knowing I had to make a choice between the familiar pain of my past and the uncertain promise of something new. Morning light filtered through my bedroom curtains and I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The decision that had seemed so complicated in the dark suddenly felt obvious in the daylight. I picked up my phone, deleted Melvin's message without reading the full text, blocked his number and felt something inside me unlock. This wasn't about Axel or anyone else. This was about choosing myself, choosing my own worth over someone who had proven they didn't value it. At the office, I moved through my tasks with renewed energy. Logan noticed immediately, cornering me near the copy machine with a knowing grin. Okay, spill, he demanded. You're literally glowing. What happened? Did you win the lottery or something? I laughed, genuinely amused by his nosiness. Nothing dramatic. Just finally figured some things out about what I want and what I don't. Feels good to have clarity. My phone buzzed around 2 o'clock with a message from Axel. Come up to the rooftop after work. There's something I want to show you. Curiosity mixed with nervousness as I rode the elevator to the top floor at 5:30. I had never been to the rooftop before. Didn't even know employees had access. When I pushed open the heavy door, I found Axel standing near the railing. The city spread out below us in the golden light of approaching sunset. I discovered this spot during my first month here, he said without turning around. When the pressure gets overwhelming, when I need to remember why I do this, I come up here. The perspective helps seeing how small we all are in the grand scheme of things. How our problems are just tiny pieces of a much bigger picture. I joined him at the railing, the wind tugging at my hair. The view was breathtaking. Buildings catching the dying light, cars moving like toy models far below, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. We stood in comfortable silence for a while before Axel spoke again, his voice lower, more vulnerable than I had ever heard it. I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how to say it eloquently, so I'm just going to be honest. I've spent most of my adult life avoiding emotional connections. After what happened with my father, after building this company through sheer force of will and calculated decisions, I convinced myself that feelings were obstacles to success, that opening up to someone meant giving them the power to hurt me. He turned to face me fully and I saw fear and hope warring in his expression. But then you came into my life. Or rather, you were already there and I finally allowed myself to see you. And everything I thought I knew about protecting myself stopped making sense. Being around you doesn't feel like a vulnerability. It feels like coming home after being lost for years. My heart was thundering so hard I was certain he could hear it. Axel, I need to be honest too, I said, my voice shaking slightly. I'm terrified. The last person I trusted with my heart treated it like it was worthless. The idea of going through that again, of opening myself up to that kind of pain. I couldn't finish the sentence, emotion closing my throat. He stepped closer, near enough that I could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from him. Then let's be scared together, he said softly. I can't promise perfection or that we'll never hurt each other. People are messy and complicated and feelings are unpredictable, but I can promise you this. I will never make you feel temporary. I will never treat your trust like something disposable. You matter to me, Camden, not as an employee, not as someone I feel obligated to help because my mother asked. You matter because of who you are. His hands came up to frame my face, gentle but steady, grounding me when I felt like I might float away from the intensity of the moment. I've been alone by choice for so long, he continued. But I don't want to be alone anymore. Not if there's a chance we could be something together, something real and honest and worth the risk. I searched his face, looking for any hint of insincerity, any sign that this was some elaborate game. But all I saw was raw honesty, a man laying his heart bare despite clearly being just as frightened as I was. Okay, I whispered. Okay, let's try. Let's be scared together and see what happens. Relief and joy flooded his features, and then he was kissing me, soft and careful at first, asking permission with every movement. I kissed him back, pouring all my hope and fear and tentative trust into the connection between us. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing harder, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving us in the purple twilight. I blocked Melvin, I said suddenly, needing him to know. This morning before I came to work, I deleted his message without reading it and blocked his number. This decision, choosing to be here with you, choosing to try, it's not because of him or in spite of him. It's because of me, because of what I want for my own life. Axel's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. Good. You deserve to make choices that serve you, not choices that are reactions to someone else's failure. We stood there as the city lights began twinkling on below us, talking about everything and nothing. Our fears, our hopes, what we wanted from life beyond just career success. It felt like discovering a secret room in a house I thought I knew completely. Eventually, we had to leave because the building security was closing up, but Axel walked me to my car, his hand warm in mine. Thank you for taking a chance on this, he said as I unlocked my door. On us. I squeezed his hand, feeling more certain than I had about anything in months. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Driving home, I thought about Mrs. Harrington's note that I still carried in my wallet. Strength is standing up again after you fall. I had fallen so hard when Melvin left, had felt broken beyond repair. But here I was, standing again, not because someone had fixed me, but because I had chosen to fix myself. Axel wasn't my savior or my solution. He was simply someone brave enough to stand beside me while I figured out my own strength. For the first time since that devastating morning weeks ago, I felt excited about the future instead of haunted by the past. My worth wasn't determined by someone who had failed to see it. My story wasn't over just because one chapter had ended badly. I was writing new pages now, pages filled with possibility and hope and the thrilling uncertainty of new beginning. And as I pulled into my parking spot and looked up at my apartment window, I smiled. Genuinely, fully smiled. Because I finally understood that I was going to be okay, better than okay. I was going to be exactly who I was meant to be, with or without anyone else's validation.